Hello, everyone. Welcome to the panel, The Ethics of AI. We have geared up to adopt artificial intelligence, which is no more just a buzzword, but also an essential for businesses around the world, but rather also a requirement. And as advanced as the technology is with its multifaceted benefits, organizations, governments, and individuals need to understand the ethics of the technology. And to do this, and to do the same, we have with us our esteemed panelists, Mr. Kundana, Rahul Chadha, and Animesh Samuel. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hello. Thank you, Vaishnavi.
So let me begin by asking Mr. Kundan Lal, what is the role of ethics in AI development and also in deployment?
So thank you. Let me come into that because that's a very vexing question actually, ethics in AI, and it's pretty large now. And so let me take you to the little background first. That AI, as we understand today, we are living in an age, we call it a narrow intelligence world. Okay, it's a machine learning world. And very soon it will enter into an era where it will become sentient, or we call it a general intelligence, artificial general intelligence. And then it will reach to a stage of artificial super intelligence. The current world which we are looking at on the machine learning world, AI is being used in multiple ways and multiple means it is being done. But maximally, if you look at, it is being used for optimizing it, okay, optimizing our responses basically. So like in preventive maintenance or in predictive maintenance, okay, and maximize the productivity. So these two aspects are currently in a narrow intelligence world. As it moves toward general intelligence, the ethical questions will become more paramount, okay. But the today world, on the ethics part of it, basically what vexes us more is that how ethics, as it is making more and more decisions around us, is going to impact us. Okay, so there are some extremes that are like laws or lethal autonomous weapons where it is being used to take a decision to actually obliterate or neutralize a human being, and the AI, the human confirmation is not there or intervention is not there. So that's one extreme of it. The other part of it is that it is making a lot of decisions which are probably we feel it is minute, but it has got a lot of impact. Like in hiring, AI is currently being leveraged. Okay, it does the first level of hiring in HR. Or, and if you look at, and if it is a biased AI, the way it has been trained, the algorithms have been trained, or the technology has been implemented, if it is biased, then it will hire certain kind of people, certain race of people, okay, or it will obliterate others, not hire them, right? That is one part of the game. If you look from the other perspective of that also, is like look at Airbnb. And in Airbnb, they actually implemented AI, and it started allocating spaces, or when you put your property on Airbnb, it allows only, probably it is more paramount in US, where it was allowing whites to get more properties to go in and rent them out, and blacks it was not allowing them. Okay, so then Airbnb went into it and they started looking at that, what are the issues, why these biases are, and those biases are getting eliminated. So these are a few of the ethical questions is there, but then there is a larger question as the narrow intelligence moves toward general intelligence, or let us say from level 3 to level 4 or level 5. As it moves from level 3 to level 5, there is a problem, we call it a trolley problem or a cartwheel problem. Okay, then the mythical questions comes into picture. Let me give you an example there, that when an autonomous vehicle, and see, when I use that term, AGI, though it is not an AGI, I can go and look at from the perspective of that AI has again got three kind of AIs which are there currently. We call it assisted AI, which actually learns things and does it again and again, but it doesn't improve, doesn't evolve. Then there is an augmented AI, which not only learns and getting deployed, it learns from the circumstances, the environment it is operating in. And then comes the autonomous AI. So you must have heard about the autonomous vehicles, right? The AVs. Now, autonomous vehicles, when it is driving on the street, the ethical questions, which we call it a cartwheel problem or a trolley problem, it comes in because in certain situations, it will take decisions which may not be ethical to human standards. Okay, so like it is driving or AI is driving, autonomous vehicle is driving, you are sitting at the back of it, and now there is a wall and the brake fails. Okay, I'm simplifying it. The brake fails. Okay, so this is the do and die situation. There are two human beings walking on the left side on the pedestrian. Okay, two pedestrians on the left side, and there is a wall on the right hand side. What the AI will do today? Will it kill the two pedestrians and save the passenger at the back? Okay, or it will hit the wall and take the decision of injuring the passenger who is at the back end. But the current AI or the narrow intelligence which is currently there, it may decide to kill the pedestrians and go and save the passenger. Okay, because the value system doesn't align with human beings. We human beings, if we have to take that decision, invariably will hit the wall, probably take an injuring to us or to our family at the back. We will not kill the pedestrian, right? So aligning with the human value, it becomes very, very critical. And that is the current problem statement. But when it goes beyond it, it goes to level 3, then the questions start coming in. Is it a good AI or it's a bad AI? Is it a responsible AI? It's an ethical AI. Okay, and those questions, how much it is aligned with us, okay, from the perspective of human value system. And for humans also, we guys, our ethical value systems is guided by intuition, our experiences, the culture background we are from, and the circumstances we are facing, right? So all these three constitute our ethical value system, and AI has to learn that.
I'll move to Animesh because he is the one on the implementation side. So Animesh, I would like to understand how can companies then make assessment in the development and also deployment of these AI tools, that if they've met the ethics and if there are no biases or any pitfalls that are associated with artificial intelligence.
Sure, Vaishnavi, thank you. So yeah, I run E42, which is a platform, a no-code AI platform on which you can build AI coworkers. So I think most of these questions are very relevant, and we face these challenges every day. And most of the stuff that Kundan just spoke about, we actually do. So we help companies like Accenture hire. We do the whole hiring process for them. So we are faced with these challenges, and just before I go into how we are tackling those today. Just to address a little bit of what both Kundana and Rahul spoke about, with a slight twist, is that, we all as humans, we have biases, so there's no denying it, right? And there is a difference between having a bias and being racist, right? So similarly, with machines also, so what are our biases? Like like Kundan said, the culture that we're brought up with, our immediate surroundings, our current status, all of those things are what builds bias into us, right? And it's a natural thing, right? When it comes to AI, there is no such thing as programming, because if you program it, it's not AI, right, anymore. Then it is a program, right, which was the previous era. Like Kundan said, we are the first stages of AI, and it's going towards, artificial general intelligence, where again there will be zero intervention of humans, right? So that is now, so for that, and the threat is, it's a threat very much. And, like people like Margaret Vestager, who was a European commissioner, she was very strict on all these companies. And you hear of all these huge billion-dollar fines that is being paid out by, all these companies. So there is a reason why. And, and if it is not treated, and if it is not controlled, if you don't have regulation, we have regulation for a traffic light, right? But we don't have regulation when there's so much of looming, so much of threat and opportunity. Like another problem that we face, engineers are behind creating or setting up the data for AI, and the engineers still today, or rather till the Oppenheimer project in Manhattan project, till then. There was no question of an engineer having to deal with ethics, So for us engineers, what we build things that, we build things, we make things move, we make things fly, we build things that people can see and appreciate. But we never think that if I'm building this building, what are people going to do inside of it, right? Or I'm creating this much of energy source, whether you're going to use it as an atom bomb or what are you going to do with it, right? So engineers never had this. This is a very, very lost field for an engineer, right? So to come and figure out ethics, right? It's a philosopher's job. It's not something that engineers have we are learned or we are taught or we are programmed with. So in all of these aspects, it's a huge challenge. And how we work around it or how we're trying to manage it in spite of there not being enough regulation is a couple of things. First is we bring awareness internally, right, to all our employees. And more from, we do the other way around, to not give out biases. Humans are dangerous. We have a reptilian brain, which is really powerful. And, given the option, we would have still been a wild, wild country, right? The laws and the regulation is preventing us from just, killing people you're angry with, right? So we still have that reptilian brain till about 10,000 years. We are a 2 million-year-old species, and till about 10,000 years ago, we were just totally wild, right? And now that reptilian brain, we are sort of suppressing it with the help of language, with the help of regulation, and all of that. So how do we tackle it? First is, like I said, we educate internally our engineers on ethics and values, and make sure that their biases are not coming through to the system, right? So if I'm creating the only way that I can control AI is by controlling the data that goes into it. So nobody can put an algorithm into an AI, then it's no longer AI. But what I can do is I can use algorithms in two ways. One is I can use it to sort of balance the data that goes in, right? So like Kundan said about autonomous, let's say, weapons, right? So if I was to train all the US data, onto autonomous police inspectors, right? For example, they would be attacking a lot of black people out there, right? That would be very dangerous. And people of colored skin would have a very tough time going forward, because the human biases would be very effective, because it would come out there, right? Because that's all the data that's available. So we have to balance out the data that we feed in. So even in the hiring process or whatever it is, we make sure that the data that is fed in is balanced. So if I'm talking for a particular position, I train it with enough of the same number of people, or from different sectors, from different sexes, and all of that. So that becomes your training. So they're able to hire a mix, the right mix, right? And also they don't miss out on the right candidates. So one aspect is the training to the engineers. Second aspect is the data, how you're able to feed it. And the third thing, what we do is we set up an independent committee, right, that looks at all of this, the outcomes after it's trained. And then that committee is able to take a call on whether the data is biased and the AI is giving out biased results or not. So these are the three ways, with which, and again, of course, this goes throughout life cycle, right? So it goes from concept stage all the way to user acceptance testing stage. So every part of the life cycle, the QA and everything, our committee, this independent committee that we've set up, they have access to it. They have access to the data, and they can take calls irrespective of the developers or anybody who's out there, right? So this is the three ways that we are using the tools. And of course, there are other to some technical, I don't know if we can cover it in the scope, but there is a lot of where we do model inversions, where we do ensemble inversions to come back to see if the outcome, what are the different pipes or different AI models that was trained on, what were their outcomes, and whether we can trace back the final outcome to the source data. So when I invert these, when we conduct these kind of model inversion or AI model inversion tests or the ensemble inversions, we are able to find the root of that data and then correct that data also. So there are few other technical things. I don't want to bore you with that. But yeah, overall, it's training or exposing engineers to their bias so that that gets corrected. That doesn't come out in the system while creating the data, balancing out the data, and then using a lot of tech hacks to be able to make sure it's.
Rahul, where are the common pitfalls that you observe organizations fall into? Now, of course, that the data we can think is the starting point of evil, or we have tools, we have the laws governing, but where do organizations fall short of implementing them because the biases still exist?
Yeah, absolutely. See, at the end of the day, any AI system is designed by humans. Humans are prone to bias, and therefore those bias get reflected in what is developed by humans. So what is very important is for companies to develop an understanding of ethics, very proactively send out a message that biases need to be actively eliminated. The message that also needs to go out is that AI is to be used for good. Now, in all of this, the heartening factor is that a lot of individuals, engineers, and companies, they realize this. So there have been several instances in which engineers in certain companies have refused to allow the company to sell their product to certain customers, saying that it can be misused. So as an example, facial recognition software. Now, facial recognition software is being deployed globally. It can be used for good. For instance, if there are any missing children, facial recognition software can find them. But if you're going to be using that for profiling or using that to convert your country into a police state, then that is a misuse of facial recognition software. Similarly, there are a plethora of examples that companies have sort of picked up and used for training purposes and also for defining what a company will do and what it will not do. One important thing that companies also need to think about is the black box that Kundan talked about. So as Animesh said, there is no real programming here. There is this black box into which you're feeding in data. There is a processing that's going on inside, and there is a certain output sort of that is emerging. Now that needs to be explainable. So if there are certain decisions which are based on what an artificial intelligence tool tells you, there has to be a basis for questioning that. And if there is a question that is raised, an explanation is required as to why that decision was made. So under the Indian Civil Procedure Code, judges are required to explain why they arrived at a certain decision. So similar things you may find through legislation become applicable on AI as well, that the explainability factor is heightened. So these are some of the pitfalls that exist today. The explainability is low because very often the creator of the AI himself or herself does not know what is going to come out at the end of it. The biases need to get eliminated because there are humans who are doing it. There have been instances in the legal field where there were certain courts in the US that were using artificial intelligence to determine whether bail should be granted to certain people or not. And what they found was that overwhelmingly bail was being denied to black suspects and not to whites. And that came in because the data that was being picked up by the AI engine was that there are more black criminals and there are white criminals. So there are, these are factors that are significant pitfalls. They can cause more harm to society than good, and which needs to be sort of addressed at the level of the engineer, at the level of the company that is developing AI products, and by the government through policy and legislation.
Are there laws in the Indian legal system or abroad or wherever you see across the globe where we can quote examples from and say, yes, these are laws available for your protection?
Right. So in the Indian context, there are no specific laws that regulate AI. There are several standalone pieces of legislation that could be applied in the context of a disputing arising out of the acts of AI. Globally also, the laws are not standalone to address issues in AI. As I mentioned earlier, the EU has come out with a draft law, which is still undergoing a discussion, and that is likely to be amongst the first laws enacted anywhere to regulate AI, the Artificial Intelligence Act. But these questions come up very, very frequently. In the Indian context, the question came up with Facebook and Cambridge Analytica. Cambridge Analytica has been under scrutiny in many countries. Very recently in Afghanistan, you may recall that there was the bombing at Kabul airport, which was followed by a missile strike by the US. What was announced over there was that, we've killed the perpetrators of that bomb attack. Within a week, the US government came out over there and said, sorry, we made a mistake. There were innocent civilians in that building and they died. So that raises questions over there, not just at the level of ground intelligence where humans are involved, but also the role that was played by the drone, by what was fed into the drone in terms of coordinates. And these are things that are being looked at by congressional committees as well as by the US armed forces. So as the AI systems become pervasive, issues have already started cropping up. The framework to deal with those issues and adjudicate on them is weak, but that is going to change very rapidly. And that is something that companies need to be very well aware of. I think Kundan made an, alluded to the Asimov rules for robots. So the fact that there is a regulation that is required for artificial machines and now AIs is not new. It goes back to 1942 when Asimov came up with these three rules. So they have been on the cards. The reason they've not been implemented is because there is no legislation. So there is no sort of risk for a company to go over there and do something because there are no laws under which he can be prosecuted. You see, when that changes, you will find that nobody is going to talk about, should we have ethics in AI or not? It will stop being a hypothetical, wish list kind of a discussion and become something which is a legal requirement, which can cause huge loss to companies. So under the Artificial Intelligence Act, if companies that deal with cell products, artificial intelligence products that impact EU citizens, if they breach that, the fines are huge. And these impact the bottom line of companies. These are no longer raps on the knuckle. Animesh was mentioning these billion-dollar fines that have been levied on tech companies. So a large company might, sort of be able to absorb that and is probably already factored in as a cost of doing business. But many cutting-edge companies could actually go bust because of not paying adequate attention to the ethical requirements.
Got it, Rahul. Got it. Thank you, Animesh. Thank you, Rahul. And thank you, Kundan. Thank you for taking time out and giving us much more insights on the role of ethics in artificial intelligence. And I'm hoping that the audience has benefited from it. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Vaishnavi, for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, Animesh. Thank you, Anwar.
Thanks. Thank you, everybody.